downside, and that was what determined what I got in. And he was, again, very, very successful. As I kind of look forward on other things we teach, everything that you said, we try to teach them. The question is how. And our speaker today really talked about, can you teach it or can you learn it? The answer is learn. And I think everything we know talks about experiential education. And I'm a big fan of crashing together engineers, business, and designers together and seeing what happens. And they all have different views of the world. And as soon as we can let them realize that it's not what the designer thinks, it's not what the business person thinks, it's not about the engineer thinks or the technologist, it's how they view it together, because that's what works, because you need all three. And we run a very successful student incubator program where we did about 100 multidisciplinary teams last year. And we focus on things like Lean Launchpad and the things. And actually, if I got my notification right, we were very fortunate, and we're going to be one of the I-Core nodes that come up. So we're really pleased with that. But what we try to do with our students, and then I'm just going to kind of wind this down, is our goal, since we work primarily with undergrad, only 4% of the groups I work with have the potential to be high potential companies and are passed on to our technology incubator. The rest is learning, the learning to do the process on a repeated basis. And I have 3 students that were hired at different years by Microsoft who are undergraduate software engineers and computer scientists. They were hired in MBA jobs, okay? And they don't have MBAs because they had created these things. They had created 10-person teams that began to sell products. They realized at the end that it would never be big enough for them to be happy, but they actually did that and they learned. And that's what we're looking for. It's to teach them the process and to teach everyone to work together, and that it's not how you design things and the human-centered approach. It's not cool technology you create and then try to sell, and it's not thinking about projects and trying to plan for them. It's all 3 together in a very lean process. And thank you very much. I think you're up.
Thank you, Richard. Next, I'd like to go on to Dr. James Roberto. Jim, I remember Oak Ridge National Laboratory well before the AEC's diversification movement in the 1970s, all the way back to Alvin Weinberg. In no time after this movement was launched, Oak Ridge began spinning out new companies, engaging industry through CRADAs, or Cooperative Research and Development Agreements, providing access to unique user facilities, and providing universities in their, or supporting universities in their education and research missions. How have these relationships evolved over the past 4 decades? And I don't want you to go over that encyclopedically. And how does ONRL encourage their workforce to support them today?
Okay, well, thank you. Actually, the external engagement really accelerated in 1983 with the approval of something called the class waiver for users at DOE user facilities. And what this waiver did is it solved the problem of the intellectual property. The result is that today there are more than 29,000 at DOE National User facilities, and the majority of those come from universities, but they also come from other laboratories and from industry. Technology transfer at the national labs received a real boost in 1984 with the extension of the Bayh-Dole Act, which was extended to apply to contractor-operated national laboratories. Most of the DOE national laboratories are contractor-operated, like Oak Ridge. And that allowed ORNL to take license to their inventions, to take title to their inventions and then to license them. And the royalties returned to the laboratory to invest in the technology transfer mission. So sort of a situation where everybody wins. The final change that occurred in the 80s was in 1989 when the laboratories were granted the right to enter into cooperative research and development agreements with industry. And this has substantially increased our interaction with industry since then. The result has actually been transformational for the laboratory. Today, Oak Ridge collaborates with more than 200 universities each year. We host 180 joint faculty. We serve more than 3,000 users each year. We provide research internships to more than 200 graduate students and 350 undergraduates from more than 100 universities each year. And in the past 3 years, we formed a new graduate program in partnership with the University of Tennessee called the Bredesen Center, which created a new interdisciplinary PhD in energy science and engineering. That program now has over 80 new PhD students who are very competitive, and many of whom engage in the entrepreneurial track, which we put into that program. As far as industry goes, we now have active contracts or CRADAs with more than 300 industries, and we have more than 100 active commercial licenses of our technologies out in industry. So this has all come apart because of strategic partnership, has all taken place because of strategic partnerships. These have been absolutely critical to our success, partnerships with universities, partnerships with industry. We simply can't address the complex scientific and technology problems that we aim to address without putting together the best teams. We can't develop the best facilities without drawing on expertise across industry and universities as well as national labs. And we can't translate our science and our science into new technologies without partnering with industry. In all cases, the success depends on building these teams. It also depends on developing a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. We try to do this by encouraging invention and tech transfer. We enter into strategic partnerships, as I said, with universities and industry, and we provide internal investments for the best ideas that come out of our staff. On the entrepreneurship, we encourage our staff through royalty sharing and entrepreneurial leave policies. The result has been increased impact in science and technology, both for us and our partners. So the changes that were started as the AEC changed into DOE and as the mission of DOE broadened to all energy technologies, and as the labs were given the legislative tools that allowed us to reach out to industry and universities, has just made, I think, an enormous difference to the science and technology fabric of the nation and to our ability to work with industry and university partners.
Thank you, James. We now come to Dr. Sam Weaver, our serial entrepreneur. Sam, you've had an extensive career as an entrepreneur and have launched a variety of companies serving a range of markets. My question to you is, when companies recruit university graduates, what weight do they place on innovation and entrepreneurial potentials, and how do they judge these potentials before hiring? Furthermore, by what means would they nurture these potentials after hiring?
Okay, the short answer is none. Not what you wanted to hear, but that takes a little bit of explanation because there are three things that you're really talking about. One of them is creativity, the other is innovation, and the other is entrepreneurship. Now, I've never met an engineer that wasn't a closet entrepreneur. I mean, it just goes with the territory. So when we hire an engineer from Tennessee Tech, and we have several, we expect to get with that creativity, and we expect the ability to do innovation. And what we do in our company, once we have people on the staff, is we encourage that innovation. We push the decision-making as far down into the organization as we can possibly push it, because the guys doing on the hands-on work are the ones who are best able to make the best innovative decisions. And frequently, they will make an innovative suggestion that they think is very innovative, then people like myself don't think is innovative at all. And we think that they're wrong. But if it's not going to wreck the ship, we let them go ahead and do it. Because as often as not, I'm the one that's wrong, and they're the ones that's right. So in that sense, we encourage it, we expect it, but I don't ever remember shopping for it.
Thank you. Before I ask the general question, this is the time to finish up your questions. And Vahid, do you have some questions? Not yet. So we could use some more questions. So my general question is, many universities are recognizing the value of developing innovation centers and integrating entrepreneurship programs into engineering curriculums, as well as valuing more applied and use-inspired research. How do you think, as a panel, TTU and universities in similar position can address this need? And anyone can start. Just raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Okay, Jim.
So I can start. Is this on? Yes, great. So our experience has been principally with graduate students and with students who have joined us in this new entrepreneurial center in our Energy and Science PhD program in the Bredesen Center. And our experience is that many graduate students are enthusiastic about entrepreneurship and the broader applications of their research. This is different from when I was a student, when we were all looking for that job at GE. And it creates a climate where I think for universities that want to be entrepreneurial, you already have a very receptive audience. About a third of our Bredesen Center students take an entrepreneurship class, and several have actually taken steps to start companies. The class that we offer is team taught by entrepreneurs from the region, and it includes the development of business plans and participation in pitch competitions, the kinds of things that you talked about in your presentation. And we take that a step further by offering access to incubators, both on the UT campus and in Oak Ridge, that can support